Turnover!
What is up, coaches, cheerleaders, and warp spawn? Welcome to part 2 of my Rocky Mountain Rampage coverage. We can also dub this affectionately part 1 of the Turnover Diaries. Basically, I'm going to be doing a more freeform vlog style thing where I get to take all the footage that I don't use in my main tournament coverage episodes and just getting to throw my artistic soul up on the screen for you to judge. It's going to be any of the bonus content, pictures, things like that. So if that sounds like something you'd like, stick around. If it's something that's not very interesting to you, I mean, you don't have to stay. I'm not going to make you. If you just want to see like regular Blood Bowl tournament coverage, stats and things like that, feel free to hop on over to the main coverage video, part 1. For starters, I've got an interview with Max, who got second at Rocky Mountain Rampage. We talked about a lot of topics, and I really had to chop down our conversation. But what we've got here is talking about his experience, talking about playing against the gnomes, a couple other things. Then we're going to talk about my travel experience. If my voice sounds weird, it's because I've been sick for weeks at this point, so I'm a little bit gravelly, a little bit extra sultry. So hopefully that doesn't come out too much or in a bad way. But yeah. What is up, coaches, cheerleaders, and warp spawn? We are here with Max. Got second at Rocky Mountain Rampage and absolutely destroyed me in game 1. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Exist. I'm busy.
Yeah. I know you say that I destroyed you. I don't know that it really went that way. I took advantage of Khemri ball handling and the general underworld ability to just swarm, annoy, and steal the ball.
To beat underworld?
I mean, so here, like, you definitely did casualties to me, and you definitely were on the positive end of regen against me.
Yeah.
So, that wasn't completely off the chart. It just, bad things happened for you when they did, and it worked out for me that game.
Yeah. So let's talk about Rampage, right? What was you want to just give everybody a rundown of your list?
Yeah, I took a fairly standard underworld roster, Roger, and then every positional, 3 goblins and all the snotlings. But, 16 players, 3 rerolls, and there was enough money for a bribe. So I'm like, okay. The nice thing about Rampage was it gave us a lot of flexibility because Underworld is so cheap with taking a bunch of skills. And normally I'm a Juggernaut guy on the Roger, but I've kind of been going over to taking block instead. And with the extra money there, it's like, yeah, okay. We'll do that. Just makes him a little more reliable, just to hit as opposed to having to blitz every turn. He's a little more defensive now that he doesn't go down on both downs. Yes, it hurts the one turn not having Juggernaut, but honestly, if you really are relying on that, you probably more trouble anyway. Other than that, fairly standard. I think I took a block, gutter, tackle, blitz, or put wrestle on the line rats just to have something and make them a little more survivable. Kick, and then sneaky dirty snotling, and I think I had 20k left over, so I said let's give one of them big hand because there's nothing funnier than a snotling going in on 2s and picking it up and just being like, bye guys.
If I remember right, that came up.
I did actually get to do that once.
Yeah.
I did get to do that once.
Let's talk about that game,
are you
too.
Getting up without having to roll. But yeah, so Brian, okay.
Yeah.
So Brian, whenever he plays in his own tournaments, always takes something generally suboptimal. So stunty. I guess gnomes just because they just come out.
And
but a whole bunch of skills everywhere.
For anyone who doesn't know which Brian we're talking about Brian 2.
Oh, sorry, Brian 2.
Yeah, he's just ridiculously good American player. Just there's the summary.
One of the best coaches in the country.
Yeah.
But yeah, he, dodge on all the important people he could give it to. He gave plus armor to a bunch of guys just to try and keep them alive, and it actually mattered. I think he had block 1 tree, and then plus move diving tackle on the other. Just a bunch of really silly stuff. And I just kind of dismantled him. Like I think turn one, I took out one of the trees and another guy or two other guys, and it just turned into the foxes are really hard to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out high movement, stunty, and dodge kind of gets away. And yeah, I got to the end of the game, and he had it on a fox. I got it off of him, and I had a whole bunch of stuff around the ball. And I'm like, okay, I have two choices. I can either go and pick up the ball and then foul, but I had to do some go for it's. But I figured, even if I fail picking up the ball, he's got to do it in two tackle zones. Chances are that that won't work. Mm-hmm. Or I could foul and then do it, but I risk fouling out because I'd already lost my bribe at that point. And so of course I went and did the, I'm going to go pick up the ball, and then I snaked the rush to get there. And he's like, all right, well, I go pick it up on a 3, and then I dodge and go for it, and he scores to tie the game. Where if I had actually gone and fouled him, it was a guaranteed armor break, and then I win. Now, hindsight being what it is, should I have done that? Yeah, probably. Yeah. But it would have changed my final matchup, and I don't know how I would have done against Steve, who played Nobility and ended up winning.
Right.
Because I think that's how it would have ended up instead. But, it is what it is. I got to try in one turn against 2 foxes and a trickster. Turns out that's very difficult.
I could imagine.
I didn't figure it out there, but I tried it again at home. I think it's possible, but you need 13 players.
Okay.
But the trick, right? You can't hit the trickster. You just can't. Unless you're hitting it with somebody who's already surrounded by players. So your initial hit cannot be on the trickster because they'll just go out and then congratulations, you're not pushing anybody anymore. Mm-hmm. So you have to surround the sidesteppers so they can't sidestep, and then hit everybody repeatedly. And just the number of players it takes is really silly. But technically speaking, it was possible. I just didn't find it at the time.
Should write I don't know, like a thesis on the one-turn touchdown versus gnomes. You're probably one of the most experienced coaches in the world at this point for that specific topic.
The thing is that in a normal situation, they have the trees and it's just impossible. Mm-hmm. Right? You put the 2 trees and the trickster up there, you literally cannot one turn. You just can't. Yeah, if you have Juggernaut on the Roger, you could push once. But that's it. And most people aren't taking a movement 9 sprint player to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
They much rather have block or 2 heads or something like that on their gutter runner. So yeah, it was a very niche situation. It didn't work out, and that's fine. Brian's a good coach. He did amazing for what he had there, and just, couldn't capitalize.
Yeah. So how are you feeling? I know there was initially a little bit of, the nice way to say it is concern. My hyperbolic way of saying it would be fear-mongering. But in terms of the balance of the gnomes, you feel like they're a comfortable stunny tier just from what you've seen so far? Would you put them up a notch?
I don't think I'd put them up a notch just because they don't start with dodge, which is the typical stunty hallmark, and that is generally what saves them early.
Right.
Right. So especially in a league, they're definitely stunty tier. You can't put them higher because half of them are going to die in the first 2 games. Now, that said, you get them in an event where you can take a bunch of dodge, and a lot of events I've been going to recently will limit you to 4 of one skill. So you could only take 4, and then the rest are still kind of, SOL. But anything where you can take that many, or they'll generally have enough skills to take a bunch, or, like this event I'm going to coming up here, or, Rampage, where it's you buy out of your skills, out of your, your starting treasury, you can have a bunch. Yeah. Although I think Rampage limited it to 4 too. But yeah, you get them to like 6, 8 of those guys with dodge. And because it's a primary, it's a lot easier to get for them. Mm-hmm. Whereas, the halflings, the goblins, they need to spend twice as much to get it, twice as much TV. So in that sense, I think they're better later. I think they have a higher cap than, say, your goblins or your halflings. Snotlings are kind of in a weird place just because of how cheap they are, and they're generally just there for stars. but I think gnomes have a decently high ceiling, but I still think they're definitely stunty. You get somebody with tackle, or you just have them roll pows, and sorry, but your AB7 plus isn't going to save you. You're still going to explode violently. That said, I've done okay. I've got a team in competitive on Fumble right now. I am 9-3-6. So my first couple games were rough, but I've won 7 of my last 8.
Okay.
I've got dodge on most people. Block guard on the trees, and let's just take it as we go.
I'm guessing you're getting your
Trying to.
SPP from distributing touchdowns.
I try. Most of the foxes get most of it. The rest are random casualties or MVPs.
Okay.
I did try to score a couple times on the illusionists to start with, just to get them dodge. They're the guys with trickster. Same with the beastmasters, but yeah, it's mostly just I hope I get my lucky MVP or the random casualty here or there. The trees obviously are just all casualties, but you eventually get it. And I started off doing it randoming the skills, and you're like, oh, you should get dodge a decent percentage of the time, right? No, I got a bunch of crap on all of them, so I kind of gave up on that and just saved for it.
Yeah,
but yeah, it
my
turns
only
out
random
they're not
generals.
awful. Well, but that's the thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
It is essentially a random general. They need dodge, sidesteps not bad, sneaky gets not bad. Diving tackle I got on the most recent one. I'm like, yeah, okay, I might keep that until he dies.
I mean, yeah, that's not. I love diving tackle. I mean, it's obviously not as I don't know what the word. I want to say staple as like regular tackle, but like I feel like it like that and prehensile tail. The fact that they don't care if the opposing piece has dodge, I just really like that as a factor.
Yeah, you can do some funny things, especially when they don't remember. Like you have your Slan blitzers who have it built in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people don't remember that they have it. And it's like, oh, I'm going to, dodge away from this. It's like, sure you are. And then, of course, because you forgot they had it, you roll a 6 and it doesn't matter. Because that's how things work.
Yeah, that's one of those things with skill bands. When I first started coming back into tournaments, because at first I did a few league seasons, then I was like, I want to start hitting tournaments again. I had basically been out of the game for like a decade, and I saw people using skill bands because before, when I would go to events and leagues, no one ever had them. Like it just wasn't a thing I ever saw. And then I'm like, everybody has them. And then there are some skills like diving tackle that you're talking about. I guess some people call them gotcha moments. And to me, that was just like, what? It's a tournament. That's what you do to win. And it's like, that's not rude. That's just how it is. And then, like, picking up on the subculture and kind of how people approach Blood Bowl differently and how chill of a scene it is. I had to reconfigure some of that and reevaluate a little bit of it. But I don't know. Overall, I think it's interesting, but it's really enjoyable to not have to worry as much. It's nice that the rules at least cover. You should allow your opponent to take back a move. Like the fact that the rules even say that is a huge step above.
As long as you haven't rolled dice, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will also say, as long as both players can actually remember the board state before, if it's one of those things where you build a cage wrong, but you don't remember how far away each one was, like, I think at that point you're also kind of like, I don't know. My opponents are lucky. My opponents are lucky because I'm taking pictures all the time, so we can rewind within reason. But
that would help.
Cool. So gnomes, any other moments stand out from your tournament performance? Any like favorite ridiculous things that occurred?
The silliest one other than the 10 casualties against Brian and that try to get a 1-turn was I actually pulling off like 7 or 8 stunty dodges to sack my turn 2 or my round 2 opponent, his Khemri. Like it's just most people who talk to me would tell you that, at least people in my leagues, I'm like the Charlie Brown of Blood Bowl. Like my luck is incredibly bad in key moments, and it's just not even funny. They usually feel sorry. And so, I'm sitting here like you see these people who are like, yeah, I've, dodging left and right with Mike Kemry and it's fine. Meanwhile, I'm like, I've got elves and I snake every other dodge. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't understand. And so to actually make that many 3+ dodges, I'm just sitting there like, did I just do that? Did that work? Like, that's wow. To actually have that happen and not get screwed is just really weird for me and was a lot of fun. Just because of just how crazy it is and how unlikely it should be, especially with my history with rolling that many dice.
Yeah. No, it's always nice. Going back to Blood Bowl 3, it's one of those things where if I'm playing orcs, I always have at least the one random goblin. And sometimes they'll screen off everybody and they'll just like place somebody marking, the goblin that's on the ground from behind or something. And they have like a side cage. And I'm like, you have to know if I have no other options, I'm just going to run straight into that cage and just try to smack the guy. And obviously, it's not going to work every time, but people have to respect possibilities. And I think that's one thing that sometimes you'll see people, they're technically playing by the book smarter with how they set up and making dice rolls worse. And then stuff is so unlikely, they consider it like, oh, it's not even worth thinking about. Whereas if you position slightly more what would technically be bad, it would make the thing that's unlikely be impossible. That way you can't actually do it, like having a straight line of dudes where they can't run through if they don't have leap or something like that.
Yeah, I I get that, and I've done stuff like that where I think I was actually playing a match on Blood Bowl 3 and I was Underworld versus Orcs. And, again, it's one of those situations where like
Overall, with your matchups and stuff, is there anything you would have done differently? Like if you could have psychically known how things were going to go down, would you have swapped any skills out or done anything different?
honestly, no, not really. Like I said, normally I'd take Juggernaut, and I don't think it would have mattered. Block was the better choice.
Yeah.
I was mostly taking one-offs on everything else. I don't actually think. Well, yeah, we could stack, but yeah, I was taking one-offs, so it wasn't like, oh, I absolutely needed that skill there, or nothing ended up happening where it was absolutely important for me to have this skill or that skill. Um, but that's the beauty of a team that has a lot of flexibility is like you don't rely on having 3 guard or 4 guard or something and you really miss that extra one. It's like, no, I was only ever going to get one, and I'd much rather have tackle for taking out a stunty team or a gutter runner or something like that. I try not to specialize a lot in that regard, other than I am a big proponent of taking tackle somewhere just
Yeah.
because it's going to be, well, almost always going to be useful.
Well, I went back and forth on it for a while, and I was substituting 2 wrestles instead of a tackle, just as kind of a thing. I know it's not 1-to-1 the same thing, but wrestle always has utility, whereas tackle some matchups was dead. But as I've done it, now I've come around to if I can tackle in 2 wrestles as kind of a thing. But it also depends on how sturdy the linemen are. Like I don't mind throwing wrestle on some skeletons, it feels fine. Um, if it's something where I'm just like, please never be based with my linemen, then I probably wouldn't go that way. But yeah, I do agree on tackle. A lot of people agree on it. I remember I took double tackle to a tournament and it was dead the entire day, which I know that's just matchup luck. And then I didn't take any tackle for the next tournament and it would have been live all but one game. And I'm just like, okay, I need to stop trying to guess this stuff and we'll just throw one on the roster, call it flat, and it is what it is.
Right. And that's kind of the idea, right? Is yeah, it sucks if you happen to lose that one or lose that player, or you run into that matchup where nope, it didn't matter that I had it and it was just dead TV, but it's only one,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when it does end up being useful, it's usually very useful.
Yeah.
Right? I have one tackle. Well, Brian had a whole bunch of dodge, and guess what? It was useful.
Yeah, it's
You know, some
always it's gonna go on a blitzer for me. Uh, Generally speaking,
yep,
if you have your block dude, it's tackle mighty blow. Just
yep.
let it be what it
No,
is.
and so yep, my matchup against the gnomes and then my matchup against the orcs in the last round, he had some blodge blitzers, and so it's like, yep, tackle is useful.
Yeah. Although I found that if you have like the one tackle piece, whenever they have blodgers, inevitably when you have to make like the desperation blitz with the vanilla lineman, that's when you start rolling your pals and get through. Whereas you're just gonna auto roll pushes with the tackle piece for some reason.
Yep, or both downs when
Yeah.
they have block. Yeah, no, that's usually how it works. I get it.
Were there any shout outs you wanted to give?
I mean, for anybody who's willing to travel, there's a couple good tournaments.
Sure. Go ahead.
One's this weekend, but people either already planning on going or
Yeah.
it's too late for that. But Bounty Bowl in Toledo, Spinball hosts that one. You've probably seen him on various things, either fumble or he's a pretty good coach. I think he get a third. I don't remember if he got third at Chaos Cup last year, but that's that one. And then the bigger ones, Underworld Cup in Franklin, Michigan, in the end of October.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the longest running, if not the longest running tournaments in the U.S.
Okay.
And it ends up being 50 guys in somebody's garage.
Nice.
Just the best weekend in Blood Bowl. You go, you play a bunch of games. There's games the night before. There's games the night of. Food, beer provided. You just go and you have a great time. And then obviously everyone should try to get the Chaos Cup in Orlando.
Oh yeah.
Try to make that as big as we possibly can in our bid for hosting some kind of world event here in the States instead of having to do everything in Europe.
Oh yeah, that would be nice. And I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, they're not going to go for that. The Europeans will have to pay money." But it's like, I mean, yeah, I think it's fair. I've been, what was it? I joined this WhatsApp like group that's Eurocentric, and we've just been talking about stuff. And I was talking a little bit earlier today about, oh yeah, I drove 5 hours to get to this tournament, and then they're like, what? You drive 5 hours? And it's like, yeah, it's like just 5 hours. It's not that big a deal.
Oh,
But
I was in Ireland. Was it 9 years ago now? And yeah, we were talking about stuff like that. We're like, oh, we're gonna take a day trip over to Dublin, and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's like an hour and a half or 2 hours each way, and that's not a problem. One of us will drive there, the other one will drive back. It's like you're not gonna stay the night. And we're like, no, like I
that's an hour and a
that
half.
sounds it's like my drive to work every day. It's like, are you kidding me? And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, this is normal. Like people in Europe don't really understand how big the United States is.
Oh yeah.
Like you can drive for 10 hours in Michigan and still be in Michigan.
Yeah, I lived in Texas. I grew up there, and
That's even worse.
it was just normal. You just go like I moved from there up to Portland, and when we were driving out, it felt like a little over a third of the trip was just getting out of Texas.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, and the world map doesn't generally help because everything is blown out of proportion and scale and stuff. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
everyone, you look at Alaska, right? It's like Alaska's not that big, right? And you put it over the continental US. It's like, no, it's coast to coast.
Yeah. I'm going to arbitrarily cut it off there. Thanks to Max for talking to me. Again, we talked about so much more, but I just have to trim it at some point, and we have such sights to show you. Let's start off talking about my list, right? So, before anything else, I want to thank the man, TJ Jackson, for sitting down with me. We did some testing. We talked about my list a lot, and it was definitely eye opening. Got a lot of perspective. If anyone ever has any list building questions or anything, please hit up TJ. We also recorded a conversation, And I don't know what happened to that file. Like, it just doesn't exist on my hard drive anymore. I probably moved it somewhere when I was sorting, and it's gonna be like some other files I have where I find it 6 months from now. But yeah, no, he sat down and had a really insightful talk about analyzing a tournament packet and breaking things down, and I was super appreciative for that. And sorry, dude, I don't know what happened there. For Death Bowl, there are a couple reasons I chose Tomb Kings. For one, it would be way easier for me to travel with just one team. I didn't want to have to pay for the extra baggage with taking two different airline trips there and back, because that would end up being an extra, well, like $40 a trip, something like that. And I was just going out of a personal item. It was a whole lot easier to carry just one team. The other thing is, I noticed that there were no NAF references to anyone playing Tomb Kings in Death Bowl 7s. Therefore, having participated at all, I am now officially the number one Tomb Kings player in the world for Death Bowl 7s. But nonetheless, I am the number one Tomb Kings player in the world, so be proud of me. On a practical level, I kind of just splashed some skills. You couldn't repeat skills, so on some of the Tomb Guardians, I threw Juggernaut, Block, Guard. Kind of does the job. If I was going to get any points, I was planning on it being bashing things. And I like Guard for Death Bowl 7s because you can choose to offer an assist or not, and you can use that as a diplomatic tool. So theoretically, with Guard, I could get someone to do something favorable for me or throw an extra blitz at, a ball carrier or something that I didn't have range to in exchange for me offering a key assist. Didn't really come up, but it's an option I like to have available. Overall, I think for Death Bowl, you just have to have something that's ultra bashy with a bunch of core skills or something that's ultra scory with a bunch of core skills. I don't There's already so many variables. I just don't know that you can try to predict everything or try to answer everything. And some of it's just going to be rolling into unlucky matchups or people realizing you're a threat and then targeting you from the beginning. Mentioned in my other video, the highlight for me was scoring with one of the Tomb Guardians. Had to dodge out. I believe I was already holding the ball from a bounce or something, but I dodged out and then rushed into the end zone with it, and it was incredible. For 11s, let's start off looking at last year's list. I got most casualties last year. You'll see I took armor upgrades on the blitzers, made them 10 plus, two tackles there, leader on thrower, block wrestle on some skellies, and then we went guard, guard, block guard, and guard on the Tomb Guardians. This year, I wanted to have a backup plan of being able to go for most casualties again. And I pretty much just swapped out the armor upgrades and one of the tackles to be able to go Mighty Blow tackle and to be able to go block Mighty Blow on a Tomb Guardian. I moved one of the guards over to one of the blitzers instead. Overall, I feel like it was a bit more solid of a list. I liked having the skills on the skeletons to be able to eat some blows, because one of the things that I thought about when I was talking to TJ was when I'm setting up my defense, what do I want them to hit? And I just didn't want them to have any good targets. In particular, with Tomb Kings, obviously, I'm throwing the Tomb Guardians up front, most likely, especially if they're guard spamming. But I have those flanks, and if I just have raw skeletons on the sides, it's not necessarily great. But I don't know. I was really happy with it overall. I got most casualties again. The Mighty Blows came into play. I sometimes am iffy on Mighty Blow. Like a lot of my casualties, it just didn't have anything to do with, but it did help out a few times. Would I go double Mighty Blow again? I don't know. I can't say for sure. I really like Tackle Mighty Blow though. I've been pretty happy with that combo, and since this event and all my test lists, I've been running one Tackle Mighty Blow piece, and it's been working out pretty well. All right, let's get down to the meat and potatoes here, or if you're vegan, we'll say cauliflower steak and potatoes. I set out from the Reno airport, which the Reno airport has grown on me. It's small, not like Portland airport small, but It's quaint. Let's go with quaint. The restaurant spread is not super in depth, but it's not horribly overpriced like some other airports, so I like that a lot. I met a new friend on the plane, which was cool, and she bought me a beer, so can never be sad about that. I think I haven't paid for drinks for like my last several tournaments, or in this case, I did throw 20 bucks in a slot machine at the Vegas airport and I made my drink money back. I got to meet up with a Portland friend who used to play Dragon Ball Super together, Carlos, and so I have my layover in Vegas to get to Salt Lake like the night before and on the way back. But we hit up a karaoke bar, went to the obligatory Boston pizza, and everybody just kind of dined in family style, pizza and wings and everything. It's amazing every single time. We hit up Fremont Street and we went to the Cat's Meow karaoke bar. So there was a music festival, I guess like new metal or something like kind of festival in Vegas at the time. So there were just tons of like alt dressed people around, and they were having like a special night for that sort of thing with a special extra song list too. And it was pretty cool. My only complaint about Cat's Meow is you get like one song in, and then once it gets remotely late, it's just impossible to get another song in. It's like a 2 hour wait or something like that. So you have to get there really early for it to count. It's definitely good to get to see the homie again, though. It's been a hot minute. We've traveled a lot. We've traveled to Washington, California, Vegas from Portland or whatever to go to Dragon Ball Super events. Grabbed the obligatory bagel now from the Vegas airport while waiting for my Salt Lake flight. So, airport hack, if you're in the Vegas airport, all the food is like really overpriced. It's probably double of what it should be realistically. But this one bagel place over in Terminal A, you can get a buttered bagel for $4, which is obscene. And they make the bagels there, from what I understand. They're like fresh. It's really good. So definitely check out the bagel place whose name escapes me if you ever end up in the Vegas airport and don't want to spend like 25 bucks on a hamburger. The flight into Salt Lake was fairly smooth. Yeah, I got some Beecher's mac and cheese. I have not had Beecher's from like a restaurant except for the last time I was in Seattle, which, what is that, like 5 years, something like that now? Beecher's mac and cheese, though, it's legit. Like, they advertise world's best mac and cheese, and I 100% back that statement up. Once I met up with TJ, we already had a plan because we were expert travelers, and we headed off to Mo Betta's Hawaiian style something or other. It was good. I ended up getting a chicken katsu and shrimp tempura, and I forget what all sauces are involved. I know it's a katsu sauce for sure, but it was really good. It was like it took a minute for the food to come out, which means they're actually preparing the food, and it was fresh and it was a giant portion. I still had half the meal left after. I ran over to Safeway to pick up a couple supplies for the weekend, just my basic little granola bars and things like that. We got over to Brian's for Death Bowl, and Death Bowl happened. The next morning, we got up a bit early, and then we headed to Neater's, which I went to last year, and I had like a salad. Apparently, I was somewhat notorious for getting the salad. But yeah, they're known for their French toast, and so I actually tried the French toast this year, and it lives up to the hype too. It was good. It wasn't really heavy either. Like I've had French toast in the past where you end up throwing a bunch of syrup on it and doing stuff, and it like kind of weighs you down a little. I didn't feel that way at all after this. It's a really good place. If you're ever around there in Utah or you hit up Rocky Mountain Rampage or something, then it's definitely worth checking out. After the Rampage, we went to Feast Buffet. It's some sort of Asian buffet, indiscriminate, I guess. But I had so much buffet sushi, and it was just adequate plus. It was really good. I also love like American Chinese buffets, and I never go to them pretty much. And this was the first one I'd had in a while, so it was really good. I tried a little bit of everything, basic stuff, pot stickers, whatever kinds of meat on skewers were there, different veggie dishes and things. But yeah, no, the highlight, like I completely skipped dessert just so I can get more buffet sushi because that was where it was at. And nobody was getting the spicy one either, so I had it all to myself. It's also nice being able to spend time with the other people from the events. It's a good way to wrap it up, and I think it really drives home. I've mentioned a lot of times, but that sort of camaraderie, that sense of belonging in the Blood Bowl scene that others have spoken about too. It's just such a chill scene. It's so nice, and it's cool to be able to unwind and enjoy spending time with these people too. In addition to just gaming, because I know historically with other games when I've gone to tournaments, it's like, oh, it's that guy I'll see at the tournament, and I'll never see them again outside of this. But it's cool to be able to go out and chill out too. This is bonus here, but Brian 2 has a massive board game collection, and there was one of the deluxe Scrabble boards. Now, fun fact, I used to be a competitive Scrabble player. I'm not going to say I was like the best of the best, but that was pretty good. And so any excuse really to play. But I was like, hey, anybody want to play a game? I was trying to play a Blood Bowl game because I was just all jazzed up, and everybody was like, no, we're burnt out. And then I was like, okay, what about Scrabble? And then Joe jumped in, who I believe he's an educator. He was the one from the top table at Vino Cup with me last year. So we've had some good chit chats, and then Brian jumped in also, and Joe ended up stealing it at the last minute. I was playing the back row. I won't go into super detail on this, but basically I was hanging back a little bit. I was doing what they call sculpting. So you're in Scrabble, you have 7 tiles on your rack, and what I was trying to do was play what they call a stem. So a stem is a collection of 6 letters that you can plug in almost any other letter and drop all 7 of your tiles at once because of it. If you drop all 7 of your tiles at once in Scrabble, it's called a bingo, and you get 50 bonus points added on to your score for the turn. So I set back, fell behind, and then came out of nowhere and dropped my entire rack at once and just caught back up and passed everybody. So that was pretty cool. Brian was playing it basically straight, just going for, consistently getting 20 plus points a turn, that kind of thing. Joe was being opportunistic and being a little bit picky. He probably did more exchanges than any of the rest of us, but he ended up taking it in the end because he was the first one to run out of tiles, in which case everybody reveals their remaining tiles. Those points get added to the person who ran out of tiles, and they get subtracted from the other players. So he ended up whooping us in the long run there. And the next day, the same crew, we headed to Thai Delight on the way back to the airport. I do not remember the names of the food that was ordered. I could not spell the names off the top of my head, but it was really good. Like, I know I've said that about everything, but it was solid. And again, we did it kind of family style where all the food was out there and we tried a little bit of everything. I remember I ordered some kind of spicy chicken thing with vegetables and sauce, and the big old pot of rice and like the fancy silver pot. And yeah, I got really filled up and lost track of time. Didn't realize my flight was approaching really fast. So by the time we got to the airport, I was basically sprinting. But I got to my gate in time. It was fine. I had one more evening of layover in Vegas. Now, by this point, I was fried. I was just ready to be home, but still a little bit of time to spend. Had another night booked at the hostel just to have somewhere to crash for a bit when I had to wake up early for my flight. But I did a little bit of Googling, and I found another hot chicken place. flight back from Vegas to Reno. Ended up getting upgraded, and I was in seat 1A at the very front of the airplane, and I felt super fancy, and I was able to lean back, and I took the best airplane nap I've taken on a Spirit airline ever. So in the future, I'm gonna have to wait and ask for seat upgrades at the last minute and see if they have any available. For anyone who's still listening, thanks for listening, and thanks for continuing to watch.
Turnover!